Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. On two occasions this past week, Ukraine used its long-range drones to target Russia's nuclear radars in the city of Orsk that is said to be 1,500 kilometers deep inside the Russian territory from the battle lines. At a time when the Western nations, led by the United States, have given Kiev the go-ahead to use long-range Western weapons deep inside the territory of Russia, these attacks by Ukraine have raised some very serious concerns. But what has really spooked Kremlin are reports that the United States flew its B-52 bombers around the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad just a week after Russia carried out drills of its tactical nuclear weapons. Our next report gives you more details. At no point of time in this war so far has the situation been as precarious as things stand at the moment. The Russian offensive in Kharkiv has bludgeoned the Ukrainian defenders. There are thousands of Russian soldiers who are being mobilized north of Kharkiv and Sumy. Ukraine's Western allies, such as the United Kingdom, the United States, and now even Germany, have given Kiev the green signal to strike at targets inside the Russian territory. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg has been categorical in his new strategy, where he states that self-defense is not an escalation.
Self-defense is not escalation. Self-defense is a fundamental right. It is enshrined in the UN Charter. As this war has evolved, NATO's support has evolved, and I welcome that allies are easing restrictions on the use of weapons. We need to remember what this is. This is a war of aggression. Russia has attacked Ukraine, and Ukraine has the right of self-defense.
Wave after wave of missile and drone strikes have flattened large parts of Kharkiv. Ukraine has been pushed back by as much as 10 kilometers along the Kharkiv front lines. Precision strikes, such as this one, will give you a glimpse of what is unfolding at this moment in Kharkiv. Every aspect of life in the Kharkiv region has been thrown out of gear. Not just military targets, but even an equestrian center in central Kharkiv was struck by a Russian missile. Tetiana Ehnatieva, who was an instructor at the now-destroyed equestrian school, could not hold back her tears.
So many children have been through our equestrian sports school. My 7-year-old niece had classes here in September when it was more or less calm. I can show you the drawing that my niece did today. She asked me to pass it on to Elizaveta Pavlina. She drew a horse and a rider. She told me, "Auntie, you're as sad as I am."
More than weapons, Ukraine is short of manpower, and to fill up the vacant positions on the front lines, it has now resorted to filling up its ranks with convicted prisoners who've been promised that if they serve in the army till the end of the war, then they would have earned their freedom. But the soldiers fighting on the front line say that their life is now worse than hell, and the only thing that keeps them going are the photographs of their families and children, to whom they dream of going back someday, provided they survive.
When I travel to positions knowing that there is a risk of dying at any moment, I always try to look ahead. I plan ahead, I think of what to do next. And when you have plans, you have the whole of the next day mapped out. You know that nothing can happen to you. You try to think about nice things about your family.
Ukraine's Defense Minister Rustem Umerov is pretty confident that Ukraine will start receiving deliveries of F-16 fighter jets pretty soon from their Western allies. Denmark, Netherlands, Norway and Belgium have committed to sending F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. For more than 2 years, Russia has exercised complete air superiority along the front lines, using its fighter jets to drop the glide bombs that have devastated the Ukrainian defense lines without coming in the range of Ukrainian air defense systems. But the availability of the American-manufactured F-16 fighter jets could change the dynamic of the Russian fighter jets along the front lines. The much-hyped American-manufactured M1 Abrams tanks, each of which cost $10 million, have proven themselves to be sitting ducks on the battlefield for the Russian drones, forcing the Pentagon to advise the Ukrainians to pull back all American-given M1 Abrams tanks from the battle lines. For Kiev, there is no silver bullet that can turn the tide in this war. But the longer this war of attrition drags on, the more the rhetoric of the leaders has tilted towards nuclear brinkmanship. Russia has made no bones about the fact that it will use nuclear weapons if its sovereignty comes under threat. And in the last fortnight, Moscow has conducted tactical nuclear drills in the full public glare of the world. Not to be left behind in the act of nuclear brinkmanship, the United States reportedly flew its B-52 bombers in a loop around the Russian territory of Kaliningrad. The route taken by the American bombers was tracked by the UK Defence Journal. Kaliningrad is Russia's most westerly territory, and it is also the headquarters of Kremlin's Baltic Fleet. And more importantly, it is loaded to the top with Russia's nuclear-capable missiles. A single miscalculation here will plunge Europe into a crisis the likes of which it has never witnessed before. China is all set to field an altogether new weapon on the battlefield, something that will change warfare as we know it forever. For some decades now, we've been talking about how robots will fight the wars for us, and that time seems to have now arrived. As part of the Golden Dragon 2024 military drills, China unveiled the latest version of its military robot dog that can conduct reconnaissance and also take part in active combat. But China isn't the only nation that is testing out robotic dogs that can fight wars, especially in an urban setting. The United States too is investing heavily in testing out technologies where human soldiers may soon be replaced by gun-carrying robotic dogs. Our next report gets more details.
This is the future warfare. A team of Chinese scientists from the Nanjing University of Science and Technology who have close ties with the Chinese military tested a robotic dog. But this dog is not ordinary. Don't be deceived by its looks. This robotic dog has 7.62mm machine gun mounted on its back. With the ability to go where no human can, this robotic dog has a capacity of firing 750 rounds per minute. The RoboDog also had an optoelectronic sight. With a shock-absorbing mount and an automatic reloading system, this RoboDog can fire 10-round bursts at a human-sized target standing 100 meters away with an astounding 98% accuracy. The mind-boggling results suggest that the robotic dogs can shoot much better than experienced soldiers. So what implications will this robot dog have for the future of warfare? If the contemporary conflicts taking place in the urban landscape with its maze and intersecting streets are anything to go by, then enhanced mobility and adaptability in complex urban combat environments will play a key role in future wars. But China is not the only country testing robotic dogs for deadly combat. As early as 2015, Boston Dynamics had developed a giant quadrupled robot for the US military. Boston Dynamics achieved a breakthrough of sorts in 2020 by introducing Spot. But the model was priced $70,000 to $140,000. In sharp contrast, China, riding high on its cutthroat electronics industry and complete industrial chain, has managed to bring down the cost of a robotic dog to as low as $3,000. So how soon will these robotic dogs be pulling the trigger on the battlefield? The idea of using robots to kill enemy combatants is not new. But advancements in AI will change the game altogether. Robotic dogs, armed with deadly weapons and a heightened capacity to comprehend the world around them, could soon be making decisions of life and death of humans. The cynical amongst us say, everything is fair in love and war, to override the questions of ethics on the battlefield. And it is the precise approach that will leave humanity at the mercy of the barrel of a robotic dog's gun.
The Sudan conflict between the Sudanese National Army and its former ally, the powerful paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, erupted on the 15th of April last year. According to a recent Human Rights Watch report, tens of thousands of Sudanese people have been killed and an estimated 8.5 million people have been uprooted from their homes. In recent weeks, El Fasher, which is the provincial capital of North Darfur, has emerged as the fiercest battleground, where intense fighting has resulted in the deaths of at least about 123 people and more than 900 others are said to be wounded. According to a report by the United Nations Population Fund, as many as about 500,000 people have been displaced from El Fasher due to the recent clashes between the warring sides since the 10th of May. Our next report gets you more details.
The Republic of Sudan has been ravaged by war for more than a year. It is now feared that a new front has opened up around the town of El Fasher in North Darfur, where, compounding the matters, the population is already on the brink of starvation. El Fasher is the only state capital of the 5 Darfur states, not controlled by the RSF. With a population estimated at around 1 million, the town was, until recently, relatively unaffected by the fighting. But since mid-April, bombardments and clashes have been reported in the surrounding villages.
The latest reports of escalating hostilities in El Fasher, the capital of North Darfur, are a fresh cause for deep alarm. Over the weekend, RSF-affiliated militias attacked and burned villages west of the city, leading to widespread new displacement and fears of a takeover of El Fasher, that is the capital of North Darfur and a city with hundreds of thousands of inhabitants. Fighting continued today on the outskirts of El Fasher. Counterattacks have led to more deaths and injuries. And let me be clear, any attack on El Fasher would be devastating for civilians and could lead to a full-blown intercommunal conflict across Darfur. It would also upend aid operations in an area already on the brink of famine, since El Fasher has always been a critical UN humanitarian hub.
El Fasher is hosting most of the displaced persons in severely overcrowded shelters. About 40,000 women in the city are enduring high-risk pregnancies and are in urgent need of advanced care. Since the outbreak of the current round of clashes on May 10th, the 3 major medical facilities in El Fasher, including South Hospital and the Saudi Maternity Hospital, have been damaged. South Hospital, which is still operational, is increasingly at the risk of closure as the fighting endangers patients and hospital staff. According to the United Nations, the 13-month-long civil war in Sudan risks triggering the world's largest hunger crisis. About 25 million people, approximately half of the country's population, are in need of all types of humanitarian assistance, whereas more than 18 million people are grappling with food insecurity in the agriculturally rich nation. Hunger, not just fighting, is rampant across Sudan now, driving displacement. Additionally, one of the worst education crises in the world is unfolding in Sudan, with a vast majority of the country's schools closed due to the conflict. More than 18 million students have been out of school for over a year. Will this severe humanitarian crisis draw the attention of the world? Or will Sudan continue to be conspicuously absent from the global headlines?
The run-up to the presidential elections in Mexico this year has been one of the bloodiest ever in the history of Mexico. A mayoral candidate was killed on the 28th of May, while another one was wounded in the Jalisco state. The spate of killings have been blamed on drug cartels, who are reportedly trying to control the Mexican ballot by the use of bullets. Our next report gets more details.
In Mexico, the campaign season marred by violence came to a bloody end on Wednesday, as a gunman shot dead an aspiring mayor at a campaign rally, days before the country is widely expected to elect its first female president. Alfredo Cabrera, running for mayor in the town of Coyuca de Benitez, was gunned down in the southern state of Guerrero, triggering chaos and panic among the attendees of the rally. Reportedly, 15 shots were heard as the members of the Mexico's National Guard killed the alleged assailant at the scene. 3 others were also injured and 2 others were detained. Cabrera, who was targeted earlier in 2023 as well, was under police protection. He belonged to the same centre-right opposition coalition as presidential candidate former Senator Xochitl Gálvez, who formally ended her campaign in Monterrey on Wednesday, vowing to fight insecurity in the country.
Hoy la seguridad está mejor que nunca.
Is security today better than ever? Of course not. 186,000 people were murdered and 50,000 people disappeared. You're going through the violence here in Nuevo León. 12,000 children murdered, 40,000 young people murdered. That is the result of a security strategy where the hugs have been for the criminals and the bullets for the citizens. It's over. You will have the bravest president, the president who will confront crime.
Around 27,000 soldiers and National Guard members will be deployed during Sunday's elections in a bid to reinforce security. In a country where homicides reached a record 185,000 in current President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's term, his governing Morena party has put forward 61-year-old former mayor of Mexico City, Claudia Sheinbaum, as its candidate. Obrador is limited by the constitution to a single 6-year term. Frontrunner Claudia Sheinbaum, a scientist by training, enjoys a sizable lead in the polls with 53% of voter support. Gálvez is second with 36%, and the only male in the running is centrist Jorge Alvarez Maínez, considered a long shot with 11% voter support. Sheinbaum ended her campaign on an ebullient note, with a rally in the capital's main square.
Friends, this June 2nd, we are going to make history. For the first time in 200 years of the Republic, we women will reach the highest honor that our people can give us, the presidency of Mexico. Once the electoral process is over, we are going to win. We are going to win.
Barring a major upset, a woman is almost certain to be elected leader of the world's most populous Spanish-speaking nation. But tackling the drug cartel violence that has turned Mexico into one of the most dangerous countries in the world will be an immediate and major challenge facing the next leader.
At least 8 people were killed and 150 others were kidnapped in central Nigeria on the 24th of May. This is the latest mass abduction in a country whose northwest and central states are notorious for mass kidnappings for ransom. In the month of March this year, within a span of a week, there were 2 mass abductions in the West African nation. The kidnappings are especially concerning given the reduction in mass abductions that have been witnessed over the past year. But the crucial question is this: is the most populous nation in Africa witnessing a resurgence in kidnapped gangs? Our next report gets more details.
Kidnap gangs, infamously known as bandits, have plagued much of Nigeria recently. Especially its northwest and central states. In the country's latest mass abduction, gunmen on motorbikes stormed the Kuchi village in Niger State on Friday night. Reportedly, the attackers arrived on around 100 motorbikes, with each carrying 3 men. In the mayhem that ensued for the next 3 hours, they killed 8 and abducted about 150 villagers. For those 3 tragic hours, no help arrived. Our correspondent Luisa Olaniyi sent us this ground report in the immediate aftermath of the incident.
There have been no word yet from the abductors of over 160 persons from Kuchi local government area of Niger State at the weekend. The raid, according to locals, lasted 2 hours on Friday, with the abductors having a field day before whisking away the victims. Amnesty International has since condemned the act, criticizing the government of leaving rural communities at the mercy of gunmen. Now, President Tinubu promised to prioritize security at his inaugural speech on May 29, 2023, and 1 year down the line, Nigerians still battle the menace of mass abductions and insecurity.
In the same week, on the 20th of May, at least 40 people were killed, houses set ablaze, and an unspecified number of people were abducted from the Zurak mining community in the Plateau state. Heavily armed gangs often target remote villages to loot and abduct residents. In Nigeria, the kidnapped are usually freed after a ransom is paid. On the 7th of March, in the biggest abduction targeting a school since 2021, at least 287 students between the ages of 8 and 15, along with a teacher, were kidnapped from their school assembly ground by dozens of gunmen. Earlier, on the 4th of March, suspected Boko Haram insurgents had kidnapped more than 100 people, mostly women, in the remote Gamboru area of northeastern Nigeria, while they were collecting firewood. Boko Haram and its rival jihadist group Islamic State West Africa province are notorious for regularly carrying out abductions in Nigeria. Apart from the scourge of mass kidnappings, Nigeria is plagued with security challenges on multiple fronts, including a 14-year-long Islamist insurgency in its northeast, separatist violence in the southeast, and frequently deadly clashes between farmers and herders in the central region. At a time when the country is besieged with pressing problems such as insecurity, rising inflation, and a foreign exchange crisis, the country's national anthem has been changed with little consultation. Is it any wonder that the Nigerians are outraged, questioning the President Bola Tinubu's priorities?
And with that's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, feel free to do so on the ID that you see on your screens. I'm your host Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.